the end of the day. The syllabus for your classes, or more importantly, because sometimes the syllabus doesn't necessarily have the reading assignment for the day. The reading assignments for the first day of class, which is Tuesday, were supposed to be up by yesterday afternoon. The rule is if they weren't up by yesterday afternoon, you don't have a reading assignment for Tuesday in that particular class. But check anyway.
He bought you some time. Good morning. Good morning. Much better. You are my 15th law school class. And no matter what class it is, all law students have the same 3 basic questions. Number 1, is there going to be free food? And the answer is yes, if we want you to show up. Number 2, is that going to be an open bar? And the answer is yes, if the faculty's there. Number 3, is that going to be on the test? And that's what we're going to talk about today. From the time that you were in kindergarten or preschool, you were all trained to learn a certain way and regurgitate that information a certain way, right? We asked you to do a couple of things. We asked you to show up to class. We'll see how many of you get my jokes. This is funny, by the way. We asked you to show up to class. We asked you to listen to a lecture, take notes, participate occasionally, memorize what you were told, and regurgitate what the professor said on the exam, right? And it worked out really well for you. If it hadn't, you wouldn't be here. The problem is that those days are over. They're so over, we need a new word for over, okay? We don't lecture, and we don't expect regurgitation of our lectures. Instead, we do the Socratic method, and it's this guy's fault. What's his name? That's right, Christopher Columbus Langdell. Dean of Harvard Law School, he decided that the best way for you to learn how to think like a lawyer was to use the Socratic method. So it's not my fault, it's his. So here's what we do not do in your classes. We do not tell you what the law is. I'm not going to tell you the rules. I'm not going to tell you how to fit those rules together. I'm not going to do rule synthesis for you. I am not going to tell you how to apply those rules to new fact patterns. And I'm probably not going to give you a whole lot of answers in class. And I'm also not going to teach you how to take the exam. What do I do? Well, I assign cases. I ask you to find the issue, rule, one more. Where have you people been for the last 4 days? Holding or rule, I need you to know the issue, the holding, or the rule, and the court's rationale. And then I'm going to challenge you to apply all of those things to a new fact pattern. And as Professors Hill and Richards told you this week, it's a great way to teach you how to think. It's a terrible way to teach you the law, right? And then at the end, we're going to give you a test. And what are we testing? We're testing your ability to take a brand new set of facts that we're not going to tell you about ahead of time, figure out from dozens or even hundreds of possibilities what issues those facts trigger, figure out the law that applies to those issues, the stuff we didn't tell you, synthesize those rules, the stuff we didn't do for you, organize it, and then tell us the conclusion. So we're testing your ability to, all together now? Well, think like a lawyer. I was looking for an acronym. IRAC. We're testing your ability to IRAC. Oh, that was supposed to be for could you find the issue? See, it was funny. All right, now we're going to IRAC. Okay. It's kind of like we want you to find the question and the answer at the same time. And why do we do it? Because that's what lawyers do, right? Somebody walks into your office, tells you a bunch of facts. You figure out what legal issues those facts trigger. You either know the law or you find the law, and you tell your client, here's how your facts will apply to the law and what conclusion or what outcome you can expect. So sometimes it feels like what we're asking you to do for class and what we're asking you to do on the exam don't go together. And sometimes what we ask you to do feels really repetitious.
Wax on, right hand. Wax off, left hand. Wax on, wax off. Breathe in through nose, out the mouth. Wax on, wax off. Don't forget to breathe. Very important.
So we ask you to read case after case after case. Breathing is useful, but not necessary. Okay. And what's the next thing we ask you to do?
Down. Small board, left hand. Big board, right hand.
But I'm almost done.
Whole offense.
Welcome to law school.
Big board, right hand. Smaller board, left hand.
3 years. Okay. So we want you to read case after case, then we ask you to brief case after case. Then we're going to ask you...
These bongos? Wait, I got it.
If only they were.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna.
Don't you much humor.
What are these?
Japanese sanda.
What do you do with them?
Funny you should ask. Right the circle. Left the circle.
Wait, wouldn't it be easier going back and forth?
But you go circle. Right the circle. Left the circle.
So now we're going to ask you to write hundreds of pages of your own outline. Would it be easier to go back and forth? Yes, but we're going to ask you to do it yourself. And sometimes...
Oh, Miss Spot.
What spot?
we just kind of torture you for our own amusement. All right. So at the end, all of this is actually going to fit together, because when we ask you to read, we're asking you to issue spot, find the rule or the holding, and the rationale. When we ask you to brief, we're asking you to see where those things fit in together and be able to synthesize the rule. When we ask you to outline, we're asking you to do that same thing, see how everything fits together, and then figure out how the court is going to apply it to a related fact pattern. When we teach you how to IRAC, or we ask you to IRAC, that's exactly what you have to do when you write your essays on the bar and when you write memos for your boss. When we teach you how to research, we're teaching you what you need to know in your first job and everything afterwards. And then you got to practice all of it. And yeah, that's pretty much what you look like. But you want, by the time that you get to practice and the bar,
Show me wax
right?
on, wax off. That! 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 Show me pentafence. That! 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 Show me side to side. That! 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 Show me sand or floor. Hat! That! 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 Yes. Yeah!
Welcome to final
Oi.
exam. So by the very end, you knew this was coming, right? I really hope you all get my Karate Kid jokes, or this just isn't that funny. By the end, you can do this. What's he going to do? Somebody say it really loud. Kick Johnny's ass in the all-school karate tournament. Jeez.
No mercy! No mercy! Play the fist, Johnny! Finish him!
So, you need a plan to get to the point where you can kick Johnny's ass in the all-school karate tournament. If you didn't see the original Karate Kid, you were raised poorly and you need to go do that this weekend. All right. How are you going to get there? I'm going to tell you 4 things that you need to do to get there. Duh. But what does that mean? When I say prepare for class, what am I asking you to do? Ms. McGuire, what does that mean? Before you brief them, read them. How many of them should you be reading? All of them. What about those note cases? Read the notes and questions. You don't have to brief those. But all those main cases, read them and brief them. Now, Ms. McGuire, I'd also like you to briefly review before you come to class. Look at your brief. Why? That, and so you don't say to me, well, it was a really long time ago when I read this. I don't care. Just tell me the answer, right? You want to be quick on your feet when you get called on in class. All right. So doing those things are going to teach you an essential skill or a set of essential skills. I know that briefing every case is a massive pain. I know it. I know it is. I did it. But remember the case many moons ago, say like 3 days ago, that Professor Wong gave you, the Hernandez case? Remember reading Hernandez? That's a new case for us this year. She and Professor Richards picked it. So do you know what I did when I got it? I read it and I briefed it. I've been doing this for a really long time, and I briefed that case. Because it's an area of law I don't know a whole lot about, and I knew I wouldn't understand the rules and the rationale if I hadn't taken the time to brief it. So yes, it's time consuming. Yes, you should do it anyway. You can count on about, at this point in your career, reading and briefing, about an hour per 10 pages of reading. Okay? I love that look. All right. But I'll bet you've heard a little rumor. Because A, this place is like high school. Keep that in mind when you're out at the bars. This place is like high school. I'll bet you've heard a little rumor. And I'll bet the rumor that you've heard is there are places on the internet and books that will do that work for you. Have you heard that yet? Is it true? Yeah, it actually is. All right, so there's a kind of key case in constitutional law you'll read second semester called Marbury versus Madison, okay? So I just Googled Marbury versus Madison, and that's the first thing that came up. 4 briefs for Marbury versus Madison. You could grab those bad boys, print them out, bring them to class, and probably be able to muddle through. If you go to the library or to the used book sale, you're going to find more study aids than you can shake a stick at that are going to give you information for your class. And they're usually known by the publisher. So some 2L or 3L will say, oh, I used Gilbert's. That's the publisher. Oh, I used Emmanuel's. That's the publisher. You'll also hear about hornbooks, nutshells, E&E, which stands for examples and explanations. Can you use them? Mr. Anderson, for what shall you use them? Should you open them before or after you do the reading? After you do the reading. There's going to be a difference. Not all supplements are created equal. So you need to think carefully about which ones you're going to use and what you're going to use them for. So they are great to help you orient yourself before class. They are great to maybe help you check your briefs after the fact to see if you nailed the issue or not. They're great to make sure you understood what happened in the case. If there's an area of law that has stumped you, things like examples and explanations that are chapter long and have great explanations of particular areas of law, that can save your bacon. This is my E&E from my Civ Pro class 20 years ago. I still have it on my bookshelf because I had no idea what the hell Erie was about. And this, you have time for a story? I know you do. I was once on call for the entire class period in Civ Pro. The entire class period. Nobody but me. And you know what saved me? I didn't know the topic, so I read the E&E the night before. That totally saved me. But that doesn't mean that you should do it for every class or every topic or use multiple, let's go back a second, multiple study aids, okay? Because what happens is there are thousands of cases and rules in every topic area. And I'm going to test you on what we cover in class. So if you're spending time in a manuals reading a bunch of stuff that I'm not covering in class, you're looking busy, but you're making work for yourself that in the end is going to hurt you rather than help you. So don't use them to do your work for you. If you're using them to do that, you're just paying somebody to do your work for you. And you're not going to learn how to do it yourself. You might muddle through class. You might muddle through finals, but not in any meaningful way. But you're not going to get away with it on the bar, and you're not going to get away with it in practice. So don't learn that habit now. Oh, and you'll be a really crappy lawyer. I pick on Miss Lawrence. Where's Miss Lawrence? There you are. Would you go to a doctor who read the CliffsNotes version of med school? Nobody really wants a lawyer who read the Emmanuel's version of law school. It's the exact same thing. All right. Thank you for giving me the right answer. And if you do that, you're going to look like this. I don't have the video of Mr. Miyagi totally rocking it on the beach, but it's cool. All right. So we know that you need to prepare for class, attend, and participate in class. First step means go to all your classes. By the way, if you miss more than 20%, you're not allowed to sit for the final. And that's 20% for any reason. Okay? I am going to tell you what you need to know in class. If there's a hypo in the class, guess what might be on the exam? There are very, 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 very few legitimate reasons for missing class. Somebody name one. What would be a legit reason for missing class? Death in the family. Yeah, actually, jury duty is great. I will actually tell you, yes, go do jury duty. It's totally worth your time. I know, I totally kick you off my jury. Nothing worse than a law student who thinks they know what they're talking about. All right. Yeah, there is a defense attorney. That's worse. All right. I used to be a prosecutor, and we actually left a defense attorney on a trial once. It was him or a guy whose wife was in federal prison. Didn't turn out well, and our head DA said, I don't care if you have a jury full of nothing but muggers and thieves. Save one peremptory challenge for that defense attorney. Anyway, I'd kick you off. All right, jury duty. What else? What else is a legit reason for missing class? Religious holidays. You got to tell me in advance. What else? Somebody else said something in this area. Hospitalization. Even the stomach flu, you can keep that to yourself. But I have had students who've had surgery and then they Skype into class. Preferably not while they're still on the Percodan. But that's the level of attending class that you need to be doing. I once had a student, I don't remember what the band was, it was like Depeche Mode or something, who came to me and said, well, the band is coming and I've been to every single one of their concerts, so I have to miss class. Is that okay? Good luck with that. Okay. All right. So, where were we? I got sidetracked by Depeche Mode. Okay. So you want to take good notes. You want to participate, either by raising your hand or by at least listening when I'm talking to someone else. You're not going to like this next one. Mr. Nielsen, where are you? Oh, you got this. Not me. Mr. Nielsen, you can give me the right answer. That's what you can do for me. Little silver laptop. What do you need to do with it? Why? That was a good answer. I liked it. Did everybody hear it? Put your laptop away. Don't bring it to class with you, and don't bring it to the time that you spend reading and briefing with you. Why?
Because the beautiful siren call of Facebook and my email.
Absolutely. Let me tell you, I have not had a phone conversation with my mother in years that did not involve me checking out either Facebook or WashingtonPost.com, right? We are not always scintillating. And the siren call, right? It goes straight from Marbury versus Madison to I wonder if somebody sent me an email to 30 surprising places that cats sleep. Number 12 will amaze you, right? It's a slippery slope. So that's one reason. It distracts you. You're not that good at multitasking. You will miss things. And it's really disruptive to the people sitting behind you when you're checking out 30 surprising places that cats sleep. There really are some surprising places on that list. All right. It distracts the people behind you. And do you think I can tell when you're reading 30 amazing places cats sleep? Yes, I can. And it is disruptive, and it's disrespectful, and it's disrespectful to me, and it's disrespectful to your colleagues. But it saves so much time, Professor Heine. It's so much faster. I can type faster than I can write. Mr. Alba, what am I going to say about that?
You're going to say that handwritten notes you can understand.
You're skipping one ahead, so I'm going to come back to you for that. Where's Ms. Dunkelman? Ms. Dunkelman? But I can type so much faster than I can handwrite. Heine, I'm not your generation. I didn't grow up with a pen and a pencil. If you have to pick and choose in class, you have to participate and be thinking through what's important and what's not important. On the final exam, feel free to type those, right? If you want to regurgitate, if you want to be able to do things fast and do a lot, fine, type to your heart's content. But in class, do it by hand. There's another reason. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Alba. I want you to restate, and then I'm going to restate.
You can understand the information a lot.
Okay, so there are a lot of studies that show that it's cognitively better for you to handwrite, and repeat exposure to information, which we're going to talk about in just a little bit. Repeat exposure to information is going to help lay down those tracks of memory for you. So when you are handwriting, you are doing something good for your brain. Just like I tell my children when they have to do Khan Academy math, it's good for your brain. Good for your brain, and then it forces you when you write your outlines, but I can cut and paste into my outlines. If I use a computer, I can cut and paste. Just say, therein lies the problem. Because it doesn't force you to repeat, to give you repeat assessments, repeat exposure to the material, and it lets you cut and paste without actually having to sit down and figure out what you're talking about. So that process is time consuming. I know it's time consuming, but guess what you all are chock-a-block full of right now? Time. You're not holding down a part-time job. You're not doing clinical hours. You're not doing OCI. You're paying a boatload of money to learn how to do this. So take the time to do it right. Okay. Attend and participate, review, and get your questions answered. Come talk to me after class. I'm happy to answer your questions. Okay. All right, next thing you need to review. And you need to do it regularly. And I don't want any psychology majors out there to correct me because I know that this is incredibly simplified, right? Okay. 2 types of memory. And I'm going to convince you first that you need to review, and then I'm going to tell you how to do it. Short-term memory, which is what? Give me an example of short-term memory. Just shout it out. Yeah, it's gone. From yesterday, it's gone, right? Where I parked my car, stuff that you just need quickly and then you can dump it and it's not necessary. Okay, short-term. And then long-term durable memory, stuff that you need to be able to recall and do something with. Unfortunately, the way that we teach class in law school is kind of set up for cramming, because I'm going to talk to you about Marbury versus Madison on the first day of con law, and then we are never going to speak of it again until final exams. So if you haven't engaged in the process of review, you're going to end up cramming. And when you cram, you're dealing with what we call the forgetting curve. And the forgetting curve just shows what happens if you wait to review, how long you can recall material. So let's say that you decide not to review torts and you wait to cram at the end. Here's what it's going to look like. Let's pretend you had 100% recall on day 1. That's going to drop really quickly, and then even when you cram at the end, you're never going to get back to where you were. So what you want to do is engage in spaced repetition. So you can see the blue line is what would happen to your ability to recall material if you just memorize it once and you never go back to it. Then the red line is what would happen if you review it once within a few days, so on and so forth. So you can see that the amount you can recall based on spaced repetition is going to go up. If you do nothing else but one review, it's going to make a huge difference. Don't do that, but you get the idea. All right. Now, what's the best way to engage in that kind of repetition? What you're going to hear about nonstop is outlining. And that's the traditional way of putting together your material. You've briefed for class, but an outline has nothing to do with your brief. It's all about the rules of the case. So this is actually my civil procedure, one page from my civil procedure outline, not civil procedure, sorry, criminal procedure outline from law school. So you'll see this is all about the rules, and the case is just a reminder of where the rule comes from or an example of the rule. So if you look down under 2C, you'll see that a defendant who wants to testify in one case but not the other, in order for the court to rule on that, there's a 2-part test, A and B. And you'll see it says Cross versus United States and then a little description in parentheses. That's the case that the rule came from and just enough about the facts to remind me about what I need to be thinking about on the exam. So outlining, that's what you're going to hear about the most. For some people, outlining just doesn't work with their brain. So you might think about doing a flow chart. This is another professor's actual flow chart from criminal law. So you're just charting out the different rules and the elements for those rules. And then this particular professor, after he did that flow chart, he gave each one of those things a number and created, so you can see the numbers there, and then created a note card to go along with it. So that's another way to do it. You don't have to outline. You can do what works with your brain, but you do need to engage in spaced repetition. All right, when do you do that? It's not really realistic to think you're going to do it at the end of every day. Not only are you busy doing things for the next day, you just don't have enough of the entire view, right? You don't have the bird's eye view yet. So when are you going to do it? I was an every week outliner. Every Saturday I'd sit down and outline for my exams. You could do it every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, or you could do it at the end of a section. There are a few people in the world who can get away with doing it at the very end of the class. Those people are few and far between. Generally, it's not going to go well for you. And if first semester you wait and do it at the very end, and you figure out it's not working well, there's no way to backtrack. Whereas if you decide that you're going to do it every week and that doesn't work for you, you can always space it out more. All right, so now you have to memorize and retain all of the information that you've outlined or flowcharted or done note cards for, however you did it. What's the best way to memorize and be able to repeat that information. Somebody just choose a method of learning. Flashcards. What else? The chase. Is that right? Okay. I didn't say it. Go ahead. Teaching it to someone else. What else? What about just sitting in my lecture? Absolutely. What else? That's it?
Working with a group.
Okay, working in a group, depending on the group and depending on how much work gets done. I hated working with a group. If study groups don't work for you, don't use them. If they work for you, use them. Okay, what else? What? Mnemonic devices. Good. All right, so retention rates. Lecture, your retention rate's going to be about 5%. As scintillating as I am, rereading the casebook, your retention rate's going to be about 10%. Group discussion, depending on the group, about 50%. Teaching it to someone else, who said that? Chase did? About 90% retention. And practicing it in some way, for example, doing practice exams, about 75% retention. So use a mix of those things. All right, so let's pretend I asked you to memorize a grocery list. I don't know why I put coffee at the very end. It should be at the very beginning. Okay. What are your odds that you're going to... Something about coffee?
So I just wanted to ask, are there any courses that you know where we can get practice tests?
Yes, actually many professors will post practice exams. And somebody who knows more than I do can tell you where to find them.
Okay.
Yeah, but yes, you can do practice exams for most professors. For example, about 3/4 of you will have me for evidence. I post weekly hypotheticals with answers and practice multiple choice questions with answers. So some professors do that. Others do something more along the lines of just posting old final exams. So there are many ways that you can practice. Isabel, where do they get where do professors post old practice exams? I just send them out, but... Did everybody hear that? Okay. You know, she really took advantage of that pause. All right. Your odds of being able to go to the grocery store and remember all of these things are not particularly high. Just ask my husband. So what can you do instead? Okay, number one, chunking information under topics. That's one of the things that outlines force you to do, or flowcharts force you to do, right? They force you to figure out what goes where. When you're outlining or flowcharting, look at the table of contents in your book. They've already done it for you. All right, so another option, be all Sherlocky and make a mind palace. Who doesn't love the new Sherlock Benedict? All right, so this is just a map of the grocery store. And you picture yourself going through and picking out what you need. Did you know there are memorization competitions? Did you know this exists? I didn't know this existed until NPR told me that it existed. But do you know how they memorize these random lists? Sometimes they use mnemonic devices, but what if I just gave you a list of numbers, like 100 numbers that I just want you to remember? You attach it to something. That's right. You can come up with a story. Another thing that you can do, and this is the one I learned, picture yourself coming home and the series of things you do, like I park my car and I open the garage door and I walk in and I hang up my keys on the hook because, you know, I'm just like that. There's a place for everything and everything in its place. And then attach each thing to one of those. So coffee is the garage door. Half and half is the clicker for the garage door, et cetera, et cetera. It sounds silly, but I'm telling you, when you go home tonight and you click that garage door, you're going to be like, coffee, half and half. Okay, chunk things in groups of no more than about 7. That's about all your brain can take. And then split it out. Somebody sing it. Come on. That was pathetic. All right. Or Conjunction, junction, what's your function? What is the function of conjunctions? Hooking up words and phrases and clauses, right? So my research assistant just took the bar, and so I was asking her for details about how it went. She was talking about another one of my students with whom she studied, and she said she kept making up songs. And I kept thinking, are you just wasting time? And then there I am sitting in the bar doing one of the essays, and I sang the song to myself. And I knew what the law was. So attach it to a song, make up your own song. Along with the kitten videos on the internet, there are like hundreds of people who have made up their songs and put it on the internet on law-related things. Okay, mnemonics, this is still how I remember the order of the planets. When I give someone directions in Utah, I still have to say, never eat sour wheat. It works. The mountains are on the wrong side in this state. So I have to do never eat sour wheat. Okay, so mnemonics, visualizations. In contracts, you're going to learn a concept called the statute of frauds. This is how I remembered the statute of frauds, as 8 different ways that these different things could come and strangle your contract. And then I memorized ways that you could cut off the arms. So you can picture it somehow with some kind of visualization. You can also create your own note cards, or there is now, there's a law professor who put together electronic note cards called Sirius. It stands for Spaced Repetition Storage, where you can make electronic note cards. All right, so let's finish up our 4-step plan. You need to test yourself. So outlining is going to help you learn the rules. It's not going to help you apply it to a fact pattern. Ooh, fact pattern, but I need to stop for just a second. Here's something that happens when I talk to students who struggled during their first year. I say to them, did you read for a class? And be honest. And they say, mostly. And I say, did you brief your cases? And they say, for Davies, because I was scared of him. And I say, did you outline? And they say, well, I got an outline from the bank, the outline bank, and I used the outline from the person who tallied the class. That's the person who got the highest grade in the class. And then I just added in my own notes where I felt like I needed to. What's the problem with that?
Is like you showed, you only remember, what was it, 10% of what you read? They're just reading and they're not actually testing their recall of the information.
But I added in my own notes.
But that's like, you might recall your notes, but not what you just read.
The reason the person tallied the class is not because they had the outline to read. What is the reason the person tallied the class? They made the outline. They made the outline. That's where the learning is going to occur. And it's painful. You would rather go hiking on a Saturday, I get it, rather than you're going to spend between 1 and 2 hours each week per class to outline. It's painful, but it's where the learning actually occurs. Okay, sorry, let's go back to testing yourself, how to do that. All right, so take advantage of practice exams that are posted in the exam bank. Several of your professors are going to offer midterms. Take them very seriously, and then many of those professors will give you feedback and let you rewrite the exam and give you feedback again. Take advantage of that. It's time consuming, but it's worth it. If your professor gives you an opportunity to do practice problems like I do with the multiple choice, do them. If small groups work for you, walk through some of the practice exams together. I never worked in a small group, except I had a group of, there were like 4 of us during finals. We would each do one practice exam and then walk through it. So we would say, oh, these were the issues that I spotted. Here's what I would have said about it. That worked for me. More time than that seems like time suckage. All right. And then there are a number of, remember we talked about study aids and what they're worth, right? There are about a bazillion books on the market that are all about how to succeed in law school. And I get them all. All the publishers were like, you want my new book? sure. Chapters 1 through 13 mostly say the same things. We happened to pick one of those books for you that we thought said it well, with one hell of a ride, because it's important information, but you don't need to read it 5 other times. But what are these good for? Chapters 1 through 13 are pretty much the same. I'm making up the chapter numbers. But what's chapter 14? I'm making it up. It's a practice exam. It's a hypothetical exam based on very simple law that you can grasp early in your career, with ideally examples of bad essays or lower scoring essays and good essays, the higher scoring essays. There's going to be a different one in all of these books. Don't buy them. Ooh, don't tell Wes that I said that. Don't buy them. Just go to the library. So I brought in 3 that were on my bookshelf. This is a nutshell series. Remember when we talked about study aids, I said nutshells. All of them look exactly like this. They're just on different topics. So this is How to Succeed in Law School, the nutshell version. There is a practice exam. How to write law school exams. You can look at the practice. Mastering the law school exam. Look at the one practice, right? There's also one called Getting to Maybe, which is very good. And you can look at, it's the only one they didn't send me for free. They happen to have some very good examples there as well. So take the time to look through those examples. Okay. Last advice. I already told you that law school is just like high school, but the boys are taller, and you have a better curfew. How many of you have gotten advice from 2Ls and 3Ls on what you should really, really do /buy/not do at some point? Come on. If you didn't, then you're not speaking to anyone, right? You're going to get lots and lots of unsolicited advice about the secret to doing well in law school. And a huge part of the secret, putting your butt in the chair and doing the work. And not looking for shortcuts. Not looking as if you are working. All right, so that's one thing. When you get that kind of advice, it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to feel like you need to run out and buy 5 different study aids because you talked to some guy on the 6th floor who said that Gilbert's was the thing that saved his life. Well, if you're struggling, go to the library and see what we have and see what might work for you. If you're not struggling, don't. Okay? There's no secret sauce. Do what works for you. We already talked about that in terms of study groups. Everybody else might be tabbing their books. By the way, tabbing just makes you look busy. It does not actually do anything to help you learn. So, by the way, cleaning your bathroom during final exams makes you feel busy, but doesn't actually help. All right. My bathroom was very clean during final exams. All right. If it works, great. If it doesn't, it's okay to say no to that. Okay, keep your eyes on the prize. Grades are a helpful thing, right? But they are not the only thing. The thing is to be competent and to pass the bar the first time. And then go be competent attorney. Okay? That's what we want you to be. All right. How many of you were English majors? You know the Henry David Thoreau quote about sucking the marrow out of life, right? You want to suck the marrow out of law school. This is the last time you will be with this many really, really smart people. And it's the last time you have to learn areas of law that will be really helpful to you. I still say to myself, I really wish I'd taken admin instead of that extra seminar on literature and the law. I really wish I'd taken immigration law, and I really do. So take advantage of the 3 years. Be not coy, but use that time. Sorry, Robert Herrick. He wasn't talking about law school. And don't Sounds trite, but don't waste the time that you have here by just getting by. Now go eat the free food. Questions? Sorry, you all are so nice. Questions? Questions? Go ahead.
How important do you think it is, like, if you kind of have a plan for what you want to do career-wise, how important do you think it is to follow that track versus kind of...
So right now, I would say if you possibly can, put that in its like little bubble and stick it in a different part of your brain. And then in the spring, Dean Davies, Dean Dickey, I think perhaps Dean Aguilar do a class planning talk where they talk about all kinds of opportunities that you'll have that you can't even conceive of at this point. And then we'll have a list of professors who specialize in different areas, and I'm just kind of on the list of like, just come talk to me, and we'll help you track out that path. So we'll work with you on that question. Other question? Seriously? Go ahead.
Do you maybe have some advice for...
Oh, I've always got advice. Go ahead. So again, right now it doesn't matter because we're going to give you this really broad-based education your first year. So we're going to give you all bar-tested topics and the ability to research and the ability to write. By the way, we don't give a lot of credit to that research and writing class in comparison to the amount of work, but guess what you're going to have to do your first summer out and ever after. So do spend the time on that, even if you are like, should I do my writing project or am I scared of Professor Kogan, right? What should I do? Do spend some time on that. Okay, so we're going to give you this really broad-based education your first year, and then when you go to those advising sessions, we'll talk to you about how you can lay the groundwork with prerequisites so you can try a couple different things. Your second year, I think the biggest thing is making sure you're hitting prerequisites. So if you want, it's like playing chess, like you want to open up options for yourself. So we'll talk about how you can do that. Other questions? You're either very tired or I'm very brilliant. Okay, Dean Aguilar.
And in full disclosure, attends the event for advising in their capacity. I'm happy to contribute.